'99, the greatest show on turf. Kurt Warner was also MVP. Tom Brady was also MVP. Peyton Manning in 2013 had 5 guys with double-digit touchdowns. MVP. You see where I'm going there, Jenny? You see what I'm doing there? Now, the greatness doesn't, well, we good at home and then bad on the road. You see, Skip, I don't know if you noticed this. The Cowboys went 1-6 against playoff teams. They averaged 37 points a game in the wins, 17 points in the losses. Now, the greatest statistical game all season long, Jenny, they threw the most yards. Guess who they did? Guess who they put that up against, Skip? The Green Bay Packers.
Oh, yeah.
At one point in time, they were behind 31-3.
I remember.
They were also behind by 17 to Chicago, down by 14 to Minnesota. But they're historically great. 14 to your bikes, too, Jenny. But they're historically
I liked
great.
it.
Historically great, Skip. You can't be historically great and you trail by 28. You trail by 14. You trail by 17. All they're doing is accumulating these yards when you get behind and you don't come from behind and win. And like I said, if you didn't watch the game, you like, man, Green Bay barely beat the Cowboys. No, they didn't. They beat the brakes off them. And that's what happens, Skip, when you get behind.
Within a late missed chip shot field goal and a potential onside.
Think about what you had to see. And Pro Football Focus says the Cowboys were unlucky. Now you're asking for luck. You need to make a field goal and get an onside kick and go down and score another touchdown in order to tie the game and get into overtime. That's luck. You see, Skip Bayless, this is not a historically good offense. This is an offense that beat up on some bad teams. They're plus 130 in 6 wins. And when they needed it, where's that historically great offense when they scored 9 points? Didn't they score 9 points against the Pacers, Jenny? Historically great. What about that 10 points? What about that 10 points they got in New Orleans? What about the 9 points they got against Philly? Historically great. I'm trying to figure out, did the Broncos score 10 points all year in 2013? Maybe I didn't look that up. What about the Patriots? Did they score 20? I mean, not.
You want me to answer or go?
I want you to go. You go ahead.
Thank you. My turn.
Go.
I want to compliment Bob Sturm of The Athletic for compiling this table because he went all the way back to 1960. It's not back to the dark ages of the NFL, but he compiled his table back to 1960. And again, to reiterate what Jenny opened this with, this is games in which you score 30-plus points with 400-plus yards and you win by 10 or more points. The Cowboys had 7 of those. That ranks 5th all-time back to 1960, which I think that's a good starting point, okay? That's 5th all-time, and he went down to 14 teams. What does it not have in common with all the other 13 teams in this table? Well, obviously, all those other teams were either good to great in playoff games.
They all win double digits.
Yeah, there are a lot of Super Bowl winners. There are a lot of Super Bowl losers. There's some championship game winners and losers, right? Yeah. So they're the one team, and he goes 14 deep, that went 8-8 and missed the playoffs. Well, this is hard to do because I'm going to remind you one thing. They had 7 such games, obviously wins. The other win was the one at Detroit that they ended up winning 35-27, so they didn't qualify with the 10-plus point differential. Right. And it's because Detroit, with 5:49 left, Marvin Jones Jr. caught a touchdown pass of 24 yards, and it cut it from 35-21 to the final score. Right. So they were up 14, and I told you the next day, I was on the floor closing my eyes because Jeff Driscoll was coming back on my defense. But my point was, Dak Prescott's offense that day at Detroit put up 509 yards, and he threw for 444. You can say bad team, whatever, but it came very close to qualifying as an 8th win here that hit all those marks. What if they had 8? That would have tied them then for 3rd on this list with the Oakland Raiders of 1968 and San Francisco of 94 team that broke through and won the Super Bowl.
And that year also, Steve Young was the MVP.
He was.
You notice, Jenny, you notice the reoccurring theme?
And the MVP of the Super Bowl.
And Tom Brady was MVP of 07. And Peyton Manning was 2013. And Kurt Warner. Now, you see something? Your guy, quarterback, Skip Bayless, those other guys were MVPs.
Okay, glass half full or half empty? Because when it was full, it was overflowing full.
It all depends on what you're drinking.
When it was empty, it was empty because none of those 8 wins or the 7 that qualify for this table, they weren't comeback wins because they weren't down 31-3 and coming back to win. They just exploded on these teams. You can call some of them bad teams. I don't think you thought the Eagles were a bad team. I don't think you thought the Rams were a bad team, right?
But you got Washington twice. You got the Giants twice.
Okay.
So that's 4-7.
So did the Eagles, right?
You take that, Skip. You're 5-1 in your division. where you're outside of the division. 3-7.
Okay.
Or the worst division in football.
So let's look at the margins of losses here. This is why Jerry's about to keep Jason Garrett.
Okay.
He's looking at margins of losses, and the only game that got kind of quote unquote out of hand was the Buffalo game on Thanksgiving. And that's a bad one to get out of hand because that's the most watched game of the whole NFL season, the later game on Thanksgiving, right?
Over 32 million people.
And they fell behind 26-7 to Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills at Jerry World. And then they got it back to 26-15, but it wasn't like the comeback against Aaron Rodgers or the comeback at the Jets when they came from 21-3 down to within a 2-point conversion pass of going to overtime.
But doesn't that explain the yardage? When you get that down, teams like, we're going to give you nothing cheap or deep.
Okay, no, that yardage doesn't count in this table.
Yes, it does.
No, it does not. It does not. We're just doing the wins.
But that's
by 10+.
But that's what
you can forget all those games.
But I'm saying,
forget the Green Bay, forget the Jets.
No, but I'm
not
saying,
counting.
No, I'm saying
you can count the yards in that they ran away with the total yards for the season. Yes, I'll give you that.
No, but I'm saying, but if you look at it, Skip, 4 of the 7 came against Washington and the Giants.
Okay, but look what Philly did. Philly barely beat the Giants in overtime, and it went down to 26 seconds left just 2 weeks ago at Washington for Carson Wentz to finally hit Little Ward Jr. for the touchdown. So don't tell me they weren't competitive within the division. But my team just wasted them every time they played them.
What would Dak have done minus his 3 top receivers? Because that's what Walker to him did.
Well, he had Zach Ertz, right?
No, Zach Ertz weren't there.
Okay, he had him against the Giants.
Yeah. No, not this last game. Yeah. And he won on the road.
But I mean, the one that they started their win.
Yes.
He had him, right? Oops,
he didn't have his 3 top receivers.
Hold on just a second. I dropped my microphone.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing since I got here in 2016. Drop the mic on it.
Jeez, come on.
So I'll have to just talk like this the rest of this one. Sorry about that. Hello, testing. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's not working.
Here's the point of this. Margins of losses.
Yes.
Okay, so they lost by 2 at the Saints, 10 to the Packers, but it got close at the end. 2 at the Jets, 4 to the Vikings, and they should have won the game. I'm sorry, but they just should have handed it to Zeke twice, threw it to Zeke, and they lost by 4. But there's no shame in that. Patriots by 4, they hung in that game, and then the Bears by 7, and the Eagles by 8. So they wiped out the Eagles and then lost by 8, and Carson Wentz managed 17 points in the win.
Okay, you say how many they lost by to the Packers? 10.
10.
Okay, but they were down 31-3. They lost by how many to the Vikings? At one point, they were down 14. They lost by 2 to the Jets. They were down by 18. They lost by how many to Chicago? They were down 1 point by 17.
I don't know. Maybe when you played football, it was just 3 quarters, but today it's 4.
But
you actually get to play all 4 quarters.
Skip, that's
my quarterback is the comeback king, man. He will not quit.
But he didn't, Skip, how you the comeback king and you sitting outside the playoffs? Now, the most...
only gets you so far.
Now, what I'm thinking, Skip, 2020, I'm thinking like, you know what? Dak should not have been worried about no celebration. Dak should have been in his game plan. But he out there partying. He with me.
I don't think he's out there.
You sure about that?
I think he's working.
Working on what? He ain't got no job.
He's probably about to have surgery on his shoulder.
Hey, no.
Which is another reason that Jerry Jones is going to keep Jason Garrett. He said, well, Dak got hurt before the Eagles game.
Oh, my goodness.
Right?
Skip, you don't even believe that.
I do believe that.
Skip, that man ain't going to have no surgery on his shoulder for what?
Well, you never know.
Hey, this just shows you how wildly inconsistent and how wildly torturous this team was on me, because it's hard to do what they